What's up, guys? Welcome back to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty podcast hosted by the Fantasy Holics. Back at you again is Bo and Brant. Brant, say hello to the folks.
Hello.
This week we're going to be hitting you guys with our early rookie dynasty rankings. We'll go through each skill position. Obviously, we don't do the defensive players here. If you're looking for that, you need to go check out Seth Berger's podcast. Some great content coming out there about the defensive rookies. But we're going to hit the offensive players today, and we'll start taking it through. You want to start at quarterback, Brant?
Yeah, we'll start at quarterback, break these down by positions a little bit. I'm going to run through my top five real fast,
Yeah,
and
please.
then we'll get through yours, and we'll chit-chat it up a little bit about it. I got Malik Willis. This is, once again, these are dynasty rankings. These are dynasty based on our thoughts of how this is going to go with this group of quarterbacks. I got Malik Willis as number one. He went to Tennessee. Kenny Pickett, who went to Pittsburgh. Matt Corral with the Carolina Panthers. Desmond Ridder, who went to Atlanta, and Sam Howell, who's with the Washington Commanders. Those are my top five. Really, one of the main reasons I have Willis over Pickett, I'll go ahead and say it now, is that rushing upside. His rushing is just phenomenal. I think Tannehill is semi being forced out slowly out of Tennessee, and I just think that the way that offense runs will really open up a chance for Willis to take off running.
Yeah, a lot of times too when we get into these rankings, it's important to let you guys know that these are subjective rankings. This is how Brant views these players and how I view these players. As it gets closer to the season, we will do mock drafts for rookie drafts. We'll do mock drafts for dynasty startups, and we will obviously come out with our combined rankings at some point. So right now they're a little subjective, and two, when you're looking at this from a dynasty's perspective, there's certain people weigh things differently. Like for me, I have Kenny Pickett number one overall, to you having Malik Willis, Brant. And your reasoning you said was, Malik Willis has got that rushing upside. But for me, Kenny Pickett, the value is because he has to beat out Mitch Trubisky, which I think should be a little easier for him to do than Malik Willis to, dethrone Ryan Tannehill, who's got the Titans in the playoffs the last several years, had a career resurgence when he left Miami. So I have Kenny Pickett 1. I have Malik Willis 2. Desmond Ridder 3, which Desmond Ridder 3, which is Desmond Ridder, and 4 is Matt Corral. You could switch those just fine, and I wouldn't argue it too much. I think Matt Corral probably gets a chance to start and play a little earlier this season, just because I don't know how proven, or how much Sam Darnold will improve from last year. Sorry. Matt Rule, being a former college coach, maybe a little bit more apt to pull that switch when the season starts out bad. And then I don't expect this guy to have a whole lot of playing time unless there's an injury. But if he does, Bailey Zappi was my fifth quarterback going into this draft. Mac Jones did really well in New England last year, and by all means should be a 17-game starter. This is not for me to say that I think, Bailey Zappi should come in and take that role. But I just really like Bailey Zappi. He had a wonderful collegiate career there at Western Kentucky, broke several NCAA records. And I'd like to see him get a chance. But like you said, it's probably Sam Howell as the fifth, just because Wentz has shown so many inconsistencies in his career too.
Injuries also.
Injuries, yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me to see Sam Howell get several games of playing time this year too. So I'm on board with him at 5.
Okay.
All right, you want to go through running back, even though this one should be fairly obvious.
I think the fairly obvious is the 1-2 is Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker. My number 3 is Isaiah Spiller, and then I got Damian Pierce there in Houston, James Cook there in Buffalo. That rounds out my top 5 right there.
Well, okay, so let's dive into this for a minute, because this is where you're going to start seeing things. The quarterback position is a little easier for us to be fairly similar on, because really there's only 5 of them that have a semi chance to play at all this year, let alone be fantasy relevant. But running backs, there's several of them that went into decent landing spots that they weren't very highly projected. You had several that were highly projected go to terrible landing spots. So take me through this because I'll get to my rankings in a minute, but you have Isaiah Spiller at 3, and a lot of people are going to hear that and say, well, what about Austin Eckler? That's a top 3 running back in PPR formats last year. Tell us your thoughts on that.
Well, out of this draft class here, I'm not saying Austin Eckler's done for by any means. That's not what I'm coming out here saying. But the last few years, you've seen the Chargers look and draft every single year looking for a guy to help spill some of that workload. Well, I think they finally got it in Isaiah Spiller. This guy was ranked as the 2 or 3 best running back coming out of the draft, or coming into the draft, sorry. I just feel like they finally got a guy that's going to help spill some work. He's a little bowling ball when it comes down to the goal line. He's got a nose for the end zone. I feel like he could possibly come in and snake quite a few red zone carries away from Eckler. And we also have seen Eckler with the injury history and everything else. I just feel like Isaiah Spiller may not, be poised for a workhorse role, but I think he's going to see a lot of extra work with trying to lower the workload from Austin Eckler to hopefully do away with a lot of those injuries.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. They added Joshua Kelly, I think undrafted 2 years ago. If he was drafted, it was late. And then last year they drafted Larry Roundtree out of Mizzou, which Brand. I'm a diehard Mizzou fan, so I followed Larry Roundtree pretty hard. And neither one of those guys was able to get it done. But they both got opportunities. And Eckler is another one that seems to miss 3-4 games every year. And if Isaiah Spiller can come in and hold his own, he should at the very least have flex value every single week, because I would assume he'd get 10 to 14 carries a game just to give Eckler a break, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him get maybe 2 or 3 targets a game as well. And if you turn those 10 to 14 carries into 50 yards and a score and 2 receptions for even 12 yards or so, you're talking fantasy relevancy there. So I get it. That's what I was getting at a minute ago is when you're looking at a dynasty draft, yes, you want to fill holes on your roster so you can compete now, but it's also about the long haul in dynasty. So you can't necessarily shy away from a guy like Isaiah Spiller because of his landing spot and him having to be behind Eckler for a year or two. You have to consider the fact that 3 years from now, what's that backfield going to look like? 4 years from now, what's it going to look like? So I get it. So my running backs, in my opinion, it's Breece Hall in a tier by himself. And then Kenneth Walker, I have at 2, who is also in a tier by himself. And then it's kind of just a gamble, in my opinion. I've got James Cook at my running back 3. I have Dameon Pierce at my running back 4. And then I actually have Tyler Allgeier from the running back from BYU that Atlanta drafted as my 5. And I kind of looked at this rankings more in the immediate impact and long-term, not so much long-term. It is worth noting that I do have Isaiah Spiller as my 6th running back. So he's right there. It's just, for me, I'm in 2 dynasty leagues. And 1 dynasty league, I'm contending for a championship, and I have no picks because I've traded my picks away for assets that I can use, right now that are proven. And then in the other dynasty league that I just took over, the team's by far the worst in the league, and I've got 6 draft picks out of 20. So I was kind of looking at it from my own selfish needs, which is immediate impact. So when I put my rankings together, it's guys that I think are going to step in and have a chance right off the bat. And I think, talking about Tyler Allgeier, yes, the Falcons added Damian Williams this year, and then obviously Cordero Patterson, but they cut Mike Davis, who he ended up going and signing in Baltimore. And I think Tyler Allgeier's got a chance to be the first and second down back to start the season. And you're talking a guy who could get 20 carries a game there. So that's where I'm at on running backs.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and hit up your wide receivers real fast?
Yeah, I do want to apologize too. I forgot to say something in the beginning. I'm dealing with a terrible cold, so I apologize if I'm hacking in you guys' ears here. For me, wide receiver was a pretty easy one to do. It was harder to narrow it down to 5, I guess, but it's pretty easy easy to do it because there's so much talent at the position. Whereas quarterback, it's like you got 5 names that have a chance to play, and that's kind of how you have to go. Number 1 for me is Drake London. going to Atlanta, another big-bodied target in Atlanta. 2 is Treylon Burks in Tennessee. 3 is Garrett Wilson in New York. 4 is Christian Watson going to Green Bay, and 5 is Jameson Williams there in Detroit.
Okay.
And the one surprise there that maybe people think I have too high is Christian Watson. He was probably my number 2, maybe 3 in my rankings prior to the draft. He's a guy that he targets the ball, he goes and finds it, he goes up and gets it, he makes plays, he's got good yak ability. And he goes into a Green Bay offense that's vacated probably the most targets out of any offense this offseason. And so if he gets that trust with Aaron Rodgers, the sky could be the limit for him there.
Absolutely. So my wide receivers, and we will differ just a little bit. Mine, I've got Drake London at number 1, so we're pretty much there. Jameson Williams going to Detroit, I have at number 2. Wilson going to the Jets at number 3. Burks I have at number 4, and I also have Christian Watson going to Green Bay at number 5. And once again, you said it, he's literally a trust issue away from possibly being the number 1 in this class.
I mean, if you talk about a guy that you could get at the end of the first round, maybe beginning of the second round in a dynasty rookie draft, that could be this year's Justin Jefferson, if you will. Christian Watson's that guy. I said this on the last episode as well. This is a guy that he's going to walk in, and in my opinion, he should be the number 1 walking in the door. I know you get that with Drake London too, but the quarterback plays a little bit better in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers than Drake London's going to have with either Marcus Mariota or Desmond Ridder. Let's just call that what it is. And if you're sitting in the back half of the first round, 7, 8, 9, 10, and maybe you need a wide receiver, maybe you're just going best player available, and you pull a guy like Christian Watson, I think you may be upset with yourself the first 2-3 weeks as he builds that trust. But you could be talking about a guy that second half of the year, everybody's trying to send you all kinds of trade offers for because he's blown up. So yeah, I'm all over the Christian Watson hype train. I'm very excited to see what that looks like. Let's talk about a name real quick that we both left off, Walker, that a lot of people are really high on, and Sky Moore. Why did you not have Sky Moore in your top 5?
Well, Sky Moore, the only reason I have him, let's see, I have him at number 8, so I mean he's creeping up. There's just, we don't really know what that offense is going to look like without Tyreek. Originally they had Tyreek to stretch the field, and then they had Kelsey hitting the underneath routes, and then you had McCole Hardman and Pringle and all that doing the dirty work underneath. Well, now you're adding Juju, who we're not even sure what Juju Smith we're going to get here. And then you've got, who else they
Justin
had?
Ross.
They had
Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah, MVS, which we all know. I mean, yes, he's fast. He actually clocked a faster speed than Tyreek Hill did all year last year. But he also has like a 50% drop rate in his career. He's not Tyreek Hill. So really we don't know what that receiving core is going to look like depth chart-wise. If I had to guess, I'm going to say you're going to see Juju as the 1. And then you're probably going to see MVS just because of his career. Actually, I take that back. You're going to see Juju as the 1, McCole probably as the 2, MVS at the 3, and then you're looking at Sky Moore either at the 4 or 5 possibly. It all depends on what happens with Justin Ross.
Let's not forget Travis Kelce's the true one.
Well, Travis, yeah, wide receiver wise. I mean,
and that's really I can't believe how early in the offseason you and I are gelling on some of these rookies, because last year, the year before, when we sat down and did our rookie rankings, there was a lot of disagreements and players we weren't on the same page with. But yeah, Sky Moore's not really there for me in the top 5 just because of how many mouths there are to feed. And I think that's similar to George Pickens in my mind. That's another name that a lot of people are higher on than I am. And it's landing spot and how many other mouths there are that are going to get the ball before these guys do.
So you brought up a name. You brought up George Pickens. I absolutely love George Pickens. I actually have him outside my top 10, though, for the reason you just said. There's way too many fat mouths in Pittsburgh to feed. Now, if you have time and you pull this George Pickens in the 3rd round of your rookie draft and you got time to sit this guy in your taxi and on your bench for 2 years, this guy could be a steal of this draft. He is an amazing wide receiver, great separation. He does have some hot-headedness where he likes to put his 2 cents where it shouldn't be. But this guy originally coming out was ranked probably in the top 3-4 wide receivers start before college last year, before the college season last year. But it's just you getting a new quarterback. You already know Najee is going to be the focal point of that offense once again, and then you still have Johnson's there, Claypool's there, Fearmuth's there, Najee. I've already said. So you're looking at least 4 names ahead of him right now in the pass catching order. But if you have a few years to wait, this guy could possibly be a steal of the draft, but he's just not something I'm looking at right now.
Another name that we left off that a lot of people have higher than you and I do probably is Chris Olave. I don't believe you mentioned him in your top 5, did you?
No, I did not. I have him right outside. I have him actually just above Sky Moore. We were talking about it.
A week ago, he would have been in my top 5.
Absolutely.
Probably. But you had a guy like Jarvis Landry. Michael Thomas is still there. We don't know what Michael Thomas is going to do. If Michael Thomas comes out and doesn't play again this year, Chris Olave, his rankings go up. And I think we'll get clarity on that probably a lot closer to a lot of people's rookie drafts happening. But if you're sitting in a rookie draft that you're going to do in the next week, or you've already done it, or it's coming up in the, before we get to mandatory training camps and, preseason games, that's a name I'm letting slide a little bit right now just because of where he's going to be in the pecking order as well. Kamara's getting targets out of the backfield. Michael Thomas is going to get his. Jarvis Landry should get his. And truth be told, Adam Troutman kind of came on to the scene there pretty late last year. I'm not saying Adam Troutman's a guy that's necessarily going to be in front of Olave, but we're also talking about a quarterback in Jameis Winston who likes to air it out and take chances. So that could be beneficial to Olave. But I just think there's other names that I'd much rather see in front of him at this point, just based on Landry. Again, prior to the Landry edition, Olave was in my top 5. But, we have to adapt and overcome as things happen. All right, let's move on to the tight end position, Brand. If you want to start us off there, or I can start us off, you let me know how you want to handle this.
I can go ahead and start us off here. I got Dulac going to the Broncos as the number 1 tight end in this class. Solely really landing based on his landing spot, really. Number 2, I got Jeremy Rucker going to the Jets. He's another guy, but you may have to wait for him a little bit. I didn't realize they added so many tight ends during the offseason. They're trying to be a Seattle 2.0, apparently. Number 3, I have Trey McBride going to the Cardinals. Number 4, I have Jelani Woods going to the Colts. And at number 5, I have Cade Otton going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Cade Otton is in my top 5 as well. And that's a guy that if Gronk officially announces his retirement, you could see move up a lot higher. But mine is Jeremy Rucker. It's number 1 for me. You remember last year I was talking about wanting him to come out last year. Mm-hmm. That's a guy that I'm really high on. I love his landing spot. I've got Trey McBride at 2. Again, Dynasty's not just the short term. It's also the long term. I don't know how much longer Zach Ertz is going to be Zach Ertz. Jelani Woods I have at 3. Just a freak nature athlete. Big-bodied guy who, again, is going to have Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. Matt Ryan loves his tight ends down near the goal line. Excuse me. I have Cade Otton at 4. Obviously, he probably moves up to 3 at the lowest if Gronk doesn't come back. And then I know they have a lot already on the roster, and I know they already have Mark Andrews, but I love Charlie Kolar out of Iowa State going to Baltimore. Think back to the Hayden Hurst.
They do like to run 2 tight end sets. 2
tight end sets, and Lamar Jackson loves his tight ends.
Yeah, that he does. And, I mean, it really doesn't have any wide receivers left besides Bateman.
Not a whole lot. All right, so we've kind of put together our top 5 at each position here. Now I kind of want to see, Brant, if you're okay with doing this. Let's do our top 20 players overall of how you would kind of rank them and take them in a I guess a 2-man mock draft here, if you will.
Okay.
Basically, I want this to be shown that we're doing this. There's no team needs involved. It's just purely based on how good we think these guys are going to be early and later on in their careers.
Okay.
So I'll let you hit your number 1 first, then I'll hit my number 1.
My number one's Breece Hall. I think he's the running back position so hard to find. Somebody that is – I don't think there's a clear-cut workhorse running back in this class. The closest thing to it, I think, is Breece Hall. But once running backs are so hard to find, I think Breece Hall is by far the number one in my book.
Yeah, I mentioned on last week's cast that the wide receiver trend is slowly growing. If you look at last year and you did a redraft, a lot of people would probably take Jamar Chase one. If you go back 2 years ago, a lot of people probably would take Justin Jefferson one. It's kind of, Jonathan Taylor would go 1 2 years ago, but then Justin Jefferson be the first wide receiver off the board. But I was really, really tempted to put Drake London at number 1 here just because I think Drake London is going to be really good for a really long time. But you're right, it is so hard to find a good running back. And in this class especially, there's lots of really good wide receivers and not a lot of really good running backs. So for that reason, I put Breece Hall at number 1.
Okay. Who's your number 2?
At number 2, I have Drake London. Again, for the aforementioned trend that is growing, wide receivers have a longer shelf life in Dynasty. The production's there right off the bat. It's not like it used to be where you had to wait for these guys to develop. And I do think Kenneth Walker's really a good player, and I think he's going to be a good asset for whoever gets him at whatever position or pick you get him. If you get him at 2, I wouldn't argue anybody for doing that. I wouldn't argue anybody for taking him 3. Drake London, though, I think has got a chance to be a wide receiver 1 week 1, and I just don't know how you let that slide.
Okay, absolutely. My number 2 is actually Kenneth Walker. Like you said, between him and London, that's the toss-up between 2 and 3, 2 and 3. I went with Walker based on solely Seattle's a run-first offense. Rumblings out of camp and out of everybody else is they're not really sure what's going to happen with Chris Carson. Carson may never play another down. And honestly, if you listen to the tone of voice when people talk about him, it doesn't sound like he's ever going to see the field again. And even if he does, coming off of that neck injury that he had, there's no way he's going to be the running back he was. And, well, Penny's made of glass. Let's be honest. Drafted him in the first round. Don't think he's ever played a full season. When he is out there, he's very productive. But he's not. He's on a 1-year prove-it deal, an injury away from never playing in Seattle again. But he's also one breakout run away from being the workhorse in Seattle. But I just think Kenneth Walker is, by using a second-round draft pick, kind of let me know as a Seahawks fan that they want to commit to the run. They want to commit to the powerhouse run of the Marshawn Lynch years of running over people. I think that's what Kenneth Walker's going to do there in Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, for fantasy standpoint, though, too, and I think it gets lost on people, again, in a redraft, these rankings would look a lot differently than they do in a dynasty. I want to say that first and foremost as well. I think Penny's going to start the season with a workload. He finished last year too well not to get a chance this year if he's healthy. But like you said, he often misses time because of injury. And I think Kenneth Walker's good enough that when he finally gets his opportunity, he's never going to turn it back over.
So with Kenneth Walker, one thing I really like is, like you said, once he gets that opportunity, he's never going to turn it back over. This is a guy you could stash on your taxi or at the bottom of your bench, taking him at the second round or second pick, third pick, right there at the beginning of the first round. And next thing you know, week 14, 15, 16, he's hanging 20, 25 points a game. Well, guess what? That's your fantasy playoffs. This guy could win you a title this year.
Absolutely.
And I absolutely love a guy like that. When you know that he may not be right out of the gate horse, but you got him sitting there in your stable, I really like Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
So
who do you got at 3?
My number 3 is Drake London. Like you've already hit it, and we've hit it multiple times already tonight. He's a big body guy. He's going to Atlanta. Atlanta's going to be playing from behind a lot, so there's a lot of targets out there. I mean, who was your guys' number 1 last year? Number 1 wide receiver. We don't need to talk about Pitts.
Well, Calvin Ridley until he left, and then Russell Gage.
Yeah. That's another reason that I absolutely love London, too. You guys are possibly getting Ridley back next year. Ridley takes, the 2023 season.
potentially.
Yeah. Ridley would take over the one. Drake gets a whole year of seeing one coverage. Then all of a sudden he becomes seeing two coverage next year. Looks great for him in years to come too. So I mean, but after Ridley, you guys had Gage and
I'll meet it as like Caius.
yeah, and that's probably about it. So there was nothing there. Gage is gone. Ridley's gone. You have Pitts left.
Yeah.
And then in comes Drake London to just scoop up all those targets. Drake London's a guy that if you took a 2, 3, heck, if you even took Drake London at 1, there's no argument for me.
Yeah, I can't see how you take an argument there either. I actually have Kenneth Walker at 3, so our 1, 2, and 3 are the same players, just a little different order. I think this is where it's going to get interesting. At 4, I have Treylon Burks. Burks, if he would have went to Tennessee with A.J. Brown still in town, I don't think I'd be discussing him in my top 20 maybe.
Absolutely not.
But, I know there's the concerns coming out of camp that, he's sitting out because of his asthma and he's out of shape. And we're in May. I don't really care what he's doing in May. I want to see what he's doing in, September, October, November, December. And I think when it comes time to it, he'll be ready for it. Tannehill's going to get him the ball. It would appear that they're going to get him the ball in space and let him work with the ball. He's pretty quick. He's another guy that I think will have great yak. I'm not going to say he's going to be similar to like Deebo Samuel where he's getting the ball in the backfield, but I think he's going to do similar things to Deebo Samuel in the pass catching game where you'll see like quick slants for him, let him get the ball and take off. Very similar to what Michael Thomas did a few years ago potentially. And Treylon Burks is just a guy that, listen, the AFC is intense. There's not going to be down weeks for a lot of those teams, except for when they play Houston. They're going to have to put points on the board each and every week. And, how do you do that? You got Derrick Henry, and I know Derrick Henry is going to be the focal point of that offense until he's no longer allowed or able to be. But Treylon Burks should, in my mind, have a pretty good year this year and in the future. So, and it gets even better if you buy into the Malik Willis hype and how big his arm is. The Treylon Burks value goes up when Malik Willis takes over.
Absolutely. Burks, and there's a few other people out there. Burks, I was high. Extremely loved him in college. I wanted him to come out last year. I don't think he was eligible. I was still high on him. Still wanted him to come out even though he wasn't eligible. Burks went to a smaller school of Arkansas. So not really a small school, but a smaller school for his ability. Thank you. Brain fart here. But Burks is a guy that definitely could take over a game. It's awesome that he's pretty much a lateral from A.J. Brown. So they're getting what they had from A.J. Brown in Burks. And then, obviously they don't have to pay him for 4 to 5 years. So Burks is definitely up there. I got him actually at number 6. My number 4, I have Jameson Williams. They're in Detroit. I know this year there's a lot of mouths to feed. But really, is there? DJ Chark had really one good year. He's not a 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown came on late. I think he'll be phenomenal there. But the thing I really like about Williams is we're getting 6 weeks where we're not going to get to see him, probably 6 to 8 weeks, which is great. But this guy was the number 1 receiver rank-wise prior to his injury. This guy's going to come out. He's going to demand the targets. It's going to be him and St. Brown as the 1-2. Well, guess what? We've seen Jared Goff for many years use 2 wide receivers with Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. Both were top 20 fantasy wide receivers. Williams, I really think, is a guy that could end up being a top 5 wideout in the future. So at number 5, I have Wilson with the New York Jets. He's just a guy that's coming in. He's going to take over that. He may not see the number 1 role right off the bat. That's still help me out here.
Corey Davis.
Thank you. I had the core. I could not come up with the last name to save my life there. I still think Corey Davis takes over the 1 role to start with. But Wilson will end up being the best wide receiver on that team, and it's probably going to be by the end of this season. He's just a guy that's going to come out and demand some attention. He's going to demand targets. We all know the Jets are going to be playing from behind in almost every game, so there's plenty of targets out there for him.
Yeah, I actually have Garrett Wilson at 5 as well. but I want to pump the brakes a little bit. There was another rookie wide receiver that went to New York last year, and Elijah Moore, who had a really good rookie year until he got hurt. Started off
amazing
slow.
slot receiver.
Yeah, and I think he's going to get his fair share of targets. He'll already have some of that chemistry established. And if you remember right, Corey Davis went into the year with super high expectations fantasy-wise and let a lot of people down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you could see it potentially being Garrett Wilson as the one, Elijah Moore as the two, and then Corey Davis as the three at some point in the season. But let's also not forget they did just get Breece Hall, who's going to be a pass-catching back. They have a pass-catching back already in Michael Carter. And then they have, Ruckert at tight end. They have C.J. Uzma from Cincinnati.
Mm-hmm.
And then they added
another tight end too.
Yeah, they added another one who's eluding me at this point, which is whatever. But anyway, they're going to have plenty of pass-catching backs available there, or pass catchers, available. So I think anytime you go into a year where you have a young quarterback, which they have Zach Wilson, and you add all these pass catchers in the offseason, it's going to shake things up. And I think to start the season, at least, it's going to be a guessing game on who you think the guy is. And it may be somebody different the first 2, 3, 4 weeks before we see some clarity and it starts to get consistent. But Garrett Wilson is at least, without question, the most talented wide receiver on the roster. How long it takes him to establish that and to become that way fantasy-wise is yet to be seen. But he's good enough that you and I both have him at 5. At 6, I have Christian Watson again. Going into a spot where there's a huge vacated target share, should walk in and see, probably 80 plus targets year one, barring any injury. I mean, you're looking at, Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, and that's pretty much about it as far as pass catchers go there. So Christian Watson's a guy I don't need to spend a whole lot of time on him here because I have earlier this episode and last week. But yeah, he's a guy that I'm willing to bet the farm on.
So that was number 6, correct?
Yep.
Well, I'm going to hit my 6 and 7 real quick. We've already talked about my 6. I have Burks as my number 6, and I have Watson at my number 7, which you've already said. He's fighting with Lazard. Sammy Watkins. Don't forget Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, for 2 weeks. Yeah.
If that.
Yeah.
A week and about one snap. Watson is fighting with Lazard and Cobb and Jones and Dillon out of the backfield, but there's not a whole lot there that's a threat to him. So that's my number 7.
At 7, I have Jamison Williams, and I'll say why. First of all, missing 6 weeks as a rookie isn't the end of the world. Again, not for dynasty perspectives. Obviously, again, in a redraft, that he'd probably be further down in the rankings.
I don't know if I'm drafting him in redrafts.
But I will say, again, it's worth noting that, I don't think they have a clear number 1 on their roster yet. Chark's been a number 1 before. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the one last year in Detroit for what it was worth. But they also have TJ Hawkinson, who's, a top 5 fantasy tight end potentially. And then you got DeAndre Swift out of the backfield who's going to catch passes there too. So there is a lot of people there, a lot of mouths to feed, so to speak, with a quarterback like Jared Goff, who has substantiated, fantasy relevant players in the past. But it is worth noting that there is a lot there, and him missing 6 weeks, at least from what you're going to get on the season perspective, is going to put him behind a lot of these other guys just because of that. 6 weeks is going to be hard to make up for. At 8, I actually have Chris Olave. I know I moved him down a little bit earlier because of, Jarvis Landry edition. But the quarterback situation in New Orleans is what's really pushing him down for me. Like, we haven't really gotten to see what Jameson Winston looks like since his LASIK surgery. I mean, last year he was off to an okay start with the probably one of the worst receiving corps in football last year. I can't even tell you who their top 3 were last year. Deontay Harris or something like that. And
maybe, and then you had Humphreys and
not even worth remembering. And so, now Jameis Winston's going to have a chance to throw to Chris Olave. Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry. And so it'll just be interesting to see how that shakes out. And then obviously you got to consider too, if Drew Brees comes back, what
in the world is this we're talking about?
Drew Brees put on Twitter the other day that he's stepping down from NBC and he hasn't ruled out coming back to the National Football League.
He hasn't ruled out a whole lot. He's talking about doing 5 things at once.
So, if Drew Brees were to come back, would that move Olave up or down in your rankings?
It's moving Olave down in my rankings. We already seen his little arm. It used to not be, but his arm is definitely not what it used to be.
A year of rest, though.
Yeah, and a year older.
I tell you, I used to be able to throw a football pretty good. If I went out there and tried to do it now, I'd be, ice packs for days. But I'm also not a pro caliber athlete like Drew Brees.
I honestly believe if Drew Brees comes back, we may see a quarterback by committee in New Orleans.
Hey, we've seen it with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua Tagovailoa.
We've seen it in New Orleans with Hill and Brees.
That's true. You aren't wrong. All right.
So at my number 8, I have Jahan Dotson with the Washington Commanders. I really like the spot where he landed. I do not like his quarterback, unfortunately. I wish I could say something better than that. But this is about the same spot where I had another wide receiver last year that I absolutely hated his quarterback situation in Bateman. But Dotson there, we've seen the market for wide receivers. The odds of them paying Terry McLaurin if they just drafted Dotson, I don't think they're willing to pay him the money that receivers are demanding nowadays. And really, McLaurin last year was so up and down, we weren't sure what scary Terry we were getting. And Dotson's going to go into a 2 role there. Unfortunately, Carson Wentz is throwing in the ball, but still, they have a decent line in front of him. Obviously, they'll probably still be in playoff contention with that division they're in, and what a surprise, Carson Wentz will probably choke it away again. But still, back to Dotson. Dotson there, he's going to see the number 2 coverage, and I think that's actually going to benefit him quite a bit this year to get in and get a chance to get his feet wet, not seeing coverages of the number 1. So, do you – no, mine for the 9.
Go ahead.
I have Isaiah Spiller at the 9. It's my 3rd running back finally coming up. I talked about it earlier. I feel that time of seeing Austin Eckler's full-blown workload is slowly coming down. Once again, not saying Eckler will not be a top 10 fantasy running back. Everything points that he still will be a top 10 fantasy running back because he did it with them spilling workloads to Joshua Kelly and Roundtree last year. So I just really like Spiller's spot. I think, like you said, he's going to get 10 to 12 touches probably per week. I think he's going to see more goal line carries than a lot of people are expecting. I feel like he's going to score in the ends using the touchdowns more than he will from pass catching and everything else. And running backs again. And once again, we don't know how long they're committed to Eckler. I think he still has 2 or 3 years left on his contract. I like Isaiah Spiller there and the Chargers. And we all know that they can hang up some points.
Well, look, you're going to a more traditional running back by committee across the board in football. You're not really seeing teams pay these running backs past their rookie contract, at least not to big term deals Zeke's may be one of the last ones we see where a guy gets a 4 or 5 year deal after his rookie deal.
Yeah, we saw well that's worked out.
Yeah. But I also have a running back at 9, but mine is James Cook. And James Cook, the reason I have him there is because, again, it's more of a guaranteed role in my opinion. Neither Devin Singletary nor Zach Moss has been what Buffalo was looking for, because if they were, we wouldn't have seen – if Singletary had been that guy, we wouldn't have seen Moss and Cook drafted. If Moss would have been the guy, we wouldn't have seen Cook get drafted. But obviously they haven't found the guy that they're looking for, Josh Allen, he's in my opinion, he's a better version of Lamar Jackson. He can do the running. He takes off, but he's also got a better arm and more accurate when it comes to passing. And I know Buffalo's put it out there. They don't want Josh Allen running as much as he has. And maybe James Cook's the guy that finally comes in and settles that all once and for all. I think this is going to be a true running back by committee to start the year. But I think James Cook will have every opportunity to show what he's got. And I think Buffalo is kind of a lot like a Kyle Shanahan offense in the fact that if one of the three steps up and becomes the guy, that's who it'll be for the next week to start. So if James Cook comes out, week 3 and he has a great week, I think he'll be the primary focus week 4 until he gives them a reason not to be. And because of that, the fact that he's got a chance to come in and be, almost a traditional workload at some point this year is a reason that I have him a little bit higher than Isaiah Spiller.
Okay.
At 10, I have Sky Moore. I know you and I both just said we were a little bit down on him because of his landing spot. How is that pecking order going to be established? Is it going to be Juju as the 1, McColl as the 2, MVS at 3? Is MVS going to be in the top 3? Is Sky Moore going to be there? It's worth noting that Justin Ross went there too, who, had he have come out after his freshman year in college, would have been probably one of the first wide receivers off the board. He had some down years, but the quarterback play kind of dropped off after Trevor Lawrence a little bit in Clemson, injuries. And, is Justin Ross going to have a chance to break that too? So, but with all that being said, Sky Moore does go to one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League, obviously. He's got all the talent coming out of Western Michigan there. And, Sky Moore's a guy that, I have him at 10. I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish in the top 3 of rookie wide receivers. I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish outside the top 10 in rookie wide receivers. It's kind of a crapshoot when you come to Sky Moore, but the value is good enough that prior to the season, I think he'd round out the end of my first round if I was looking at had a pick at the 110.
Absolutely. I've got Chris Olave at my 10. I have Sky Moore at my 11. Olave, we've hit multiple times already. It's all about, Winston's throwing the ball. We just don't know what that's going to look like. Landry's obviously probably going to run the slot because, well, he's an amazing slot receiver. Michael Thomas is probably going to demand targets, and then you got Chris Olave. So we just don't really know how that's going to turn out. Now, my number 11, you just hit on Sky Moore, and I'm going to hit on him a little bit more. This guy's out of Western Michigan. Came out, declared for the draft early. So, obviously he has to be good at something if you're coming out of a smaller college declaring for the draft early. And what was he? Early second-round draft pick. So this is a guy that, like you hit on, this guy could be the number 1 wide receiver in this class. He could end up winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, or he could finish outside the top 10. It all depends on how the training camp and everything goes. So Sky Moore is one of those guys that as this offseason moves on, he's going to go up and down our rankings. So he's one of those guys that if you get a chance to take him in the first round, early second, I think he's a great guy to take a gamble on. Obviously, we know he's there for at least the next 3 to 4 years, and we all know who he's tied to. So, and Juju signed, a 2-year deal, I think?
I believe so.
So Sky Moore's just one of those guys that you may have to sit back and wait, or he could be instant start.
Yeah, at number 11, I actually go back to the running backs here because this is where I kind of think that you start to see some running backs go in your rookie drafts is the tail end of the first, beginning of the second. I have Dameon Pierce here, the Florida running back that got drafted by the Houston Texans, and this is not necessarily to say that I think you're going to see a running back, at least not at this point in time, go to Houston and be extremely fantasy relevant. But if you do have a true hole at running back and you're looking for a guy that you can draft and start week 1 and have a fairly good idea what you're going to have, Dameon Pierce is that guy. Off the top of my head, the only names that I can think of in front of him are Marlon Mack and did Rex Burkhead go there this offseason maybe? But either way, you're talking about Marlon Mack, who's coming off of an ACL tear or Achilles tear. And, Dameon Pierce is going to have a chance to be a 3-down back in Houston. And yeah, I understand that Houston's going to trail in games this year. They're not going to be a whole lot better than what they have been in the past. They should take a step back from maybe last year. Excuse me. But this is a guy that could truly step in and be like where would we have Isaiah Spiller on our rankings if he ended up in Houston? I mean, he'd be a top 4 pick,
Absolutely.
consensus. And I obviously Dameon Pierce is a lot less touted than Isaiah Spiller is and things, but nonetheless the value that he's walking into right out the door is pretty immense in my opinion. And again, even if he's getting 12, 15 carries a game and 5 targets, I mean, you're talking about some fantasy relevancy there. So I've got him at 11, and then I have Jahan Dotson from Washington at 12. And again, like you alluded to, the only reason he's as far down as he is mainly due to Carson Wentz. So
at number 12, is that what we kicked? Yep. Yeah, number 12. I also have Pierce there in Houston. Once again, you're fighting with Rex Burkhead, who's never been a 3-down back, and Marlon Mack, who, like you said, is coming off an Achilles tear. So
was that right? Was it Rex Burkhead?
Rex Burkhead is still there. Yes. Wow. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure if David Johnson's still there or not. I'm still trying to figure that one out. You can't really find a whole lot about him right now. But yeah, I mean, you're sitting there behind, even if David Johnson is still there. I'm not sure why I can't find anything out about him right now. But you're fighting with David Johnson, Marlon Mack, and Rex Burkhead. There's not a whole lot in front of you that has shown a whole lot. Marlon Mack has had some great fantasy value, but just not. I don't think he's got it anymore. So, excuse me. At my number 13, I have Alec Pierce with the Indianapolis Colts wide receiver. He's going to play in Indianapolis, who their true number, I mean, they have Pittman, who absolutely, I think, emerged as their number 1. And then you got Pierce going in with Matt Ryan, who we all know Matt Ryan, and you know firsthand watching all the Falcons game. Matt Ryan has no problem airing the ball out.
None.
Matt Ryan might be playing behind the best offensive line that he's ever played behind.
I would say so.
And also probably with the best running back he's ever had. That box is going to get loaded for Taylor, and he's going to have ample opportunity to air that ball out, and I think there's going to be plenty of targets to go around. So I really like him, and I like him for the future. We're not sure what Indy's future holds for the quarterback, but this kid coming out of Cincy, I really liked. I had him in my top 5 pre-draft after watching some tape on him and everything else. I think he's going to come in and make an immediate impact. And back to the other Pierce, David Johnson is officially a free agent. I did finally figure it out. Took me a second.
Hey, that's why we record 50-minute episodes. It gives us time to look stuff up as we need to. At 13, I have Tyler Allgeier, the running back for Atlanta out of BYU. Again, this is solely based on the fact that I think he's going to have an opportunity early to come in and establish some fantasy value. Again, we talked about it. Damian Williams is there. Quandre Ollison's there, and Cordero Patterson's there. And so, Arthur Smith is a guy that was there for Derrick Henry's resurgence and Tennessee, where Derrick Henry's career really took off, and he was getting the 300 plus carries a year. And this is in no way, shape, or form to say that's Tyler Allgeier, but Tyler Allgeier should be a person that steps in and gets an opportunity. And Tyler Allgeier's come out post draft now and said that a lot of the playbook looks really similar to what he learned in BYU. So hopefully, maybe the learning curve is not really that tremendous for him, and he gets an opportunity to show what he's got. At 14, I have George Pickens. Again, we talked about all the mouths to feed in Pittsburgh already as well. But with that being said, I still think Pickens has a lot of value because when you talk about Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and the pass catchers that are sitting there in front of him on the quote-unquote depth chart, if you will, are guys that you could see him leapfrog if he comes in and shows what he did at Georgia. So I've still got high hopes for Pickens, but not high enough to have him in my top 10.
Yeah, absolutely. At 14, I have James Cook there in Buffalo. The only thing is, I don't know what to expect out of that backfield. Singletary showed flashes of being serviceable near the end of the season. Zach Moss he showed enough to where Zach Moss was being healthy scratch at some games. So I think, like you said, that is going to be for at least the next year or two a bona fide committee there in Buffalo. So that's why I have him so low compared to where you had him at 9. I have him at 14. 15, I have not even going to try it. I have the running back for Atlanta.
Algier.
Thank you. Sometimes I struggle with names. You guys will notice that. But yeah, I've got him at number 15. He's stepping into a place where he can become the workhorse right off the bat. And we do know that Arthur Smith loves to pound the rock. We saw that in Tennessee prior to going to Atlanta. This kid's only 22 years old also. 5'11", 221 pounds. He's built like a brick house. So this is a guy that we definitely easily could see turn into a workhorse back.
Yeah, no doubt. At 15, I have John Mechie, the Alabama wide receiver that went to Houston. This one's, again, because he walks into a wide receiver room that's got the likes of Brandon Cooks. And that's, essentially what you're looking at there. And Mechie showed sparks in Alabama as the 2 behind Jamison Williams. And I think this is going to be a guy that you see get a lot of rocket screens, quick wide receiver screens, get the ball in his hand quick, let him move in space. Obviously, he's coming off of an injury as well. But I think Mitchie's going to be a guy that you could come in. And this is another one that could go anywhere from top 5 to finish the season to, bottom 10. It's all over. But just because of the fact that he's walking into a wide receiver room, with the exception of Brandon Cooks, who has injury history, is kind of wide open. At 16, I've got Isaiah Spiller, and the reason I do have him as low as I do is just because the wide receiver position is deeper in this class. It's better in this class. And I think, Spiller, Spiller's going to have value, but it may not be as immediate as some of these other guys. I think long-term Spiller, will end up being a top 4 running back in this class, probably, if not top 3. But right now, I'm going to keep him, back. And I think 16's comfortably where I'm comfortably at with him.
Okay. All right. You got Isaiah Spiller there. Gotcha. My 16, I have one of my favorite guys coming into the draft is Brian Robinson, running back from Alabama, going to the Washington Commanders. We've seen plenty of injury history with Antonio Gibson. He dealt with the shin issue all year last year. And Brian Robinson, I think, is going to be a guy that you're going to see get used a lot between the tackles there in Washington. I don't think you're going to see much pass-catching role from him with Gibson still there, and they were so hard to get J.D. McKissic back. So I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of PPR upside for him. But this is a guy that I absolutely love to be able to pound between the tackles. And then rolling down to my number 17. Number 17, I got David Bell going to the Cleveland Browns. Mari Cooper's in front of him. Deshaun Watson's there. We've seen Deshaun Watson take nobodies to heroes as wide receivers. We've seen him play with, the likes of Hopkins, but still have a serviceable number 2 target there. I think Watson in behind that line in that format in Cleveland, I think that's definitely going to be a good fit for David Bell. I absolutely love him going to Cleveland.
Yeah. I've got Alec Pierce at 17. Again, like you alluded to, I love Matt Ryan as a lifelong Falcons fan. And I'm obviously rooting for Matt Ryan to succeed. And I think Alec Pierce is going to help him do that. Matt Ryan's a guy who spreads the ball around. If you look at like a guy like Aaron Rodgers in the past, right? It seemed like no matter where we were at in the game, he only had eyes for Devontae Adams. Matt Ryan's never been that guy. I mean, that's in 2016, Matt Ryan, his MVP year, set the record for most pass catching touchdowns by different number of players. And I think it was like 16 people. So he gets the ball around and he spreads the wealth a lot. And it's really easy to gain his confidence and his trust. And I think Alec Pierce is going to be a guy that comes in and benefits from that really nicely. And at 18, I actually have David Bell. Like you said, whether Watson plays or not, I still think that David Bell is going to have a really nice season. if Watson's not playing, I see him lean on the run heavier. If I knew Watson was going to play 17 games this year and there was going to be no suspension issues, I'd probably have David Bell up into my top 15, maybe even inching into the top 10. But just because of the uncertainty of Deshaun Watson and his legal case, I'm going to leave Bell just a little bit lower.
Okay. All right. So at my number 18, I got Zamir White. This was a guy last year I talked about as a sleeper pick for running backs when he originally was going to declare and then ended up going back to Georgia. He's going to the Raiders. He's behind Jacobs, who they turned down his fifth-year option. Zamir White could end up being the workhorse back there in Vegas come next year. And we've seen Jacobs have injury history too. This guy, I think, has nothing but upside to come in. Now, obviously, he's one of those another guys you're going to have to wait, like you see a lot of these guys this year, but I think that his landing spot is amazing for him. Now, at number 19, this is going to come as a little bit of a shock to a lot of people. I've got Pierre Strong Jr. going to the New England Patriots. Now, I know we all avoid the Patriots backfield, which, we never know what he's going to do. But this guy here, I mean, he was coming from the Jackrabbits there in South Dakota. He ran a 4.37. He's fast. He's quick. He's built great. I think this guy could almost be an immediate impact player for the New England Patriots. Now, I know you got Damian Harris there still. They drafted Ramondre Stevenson. James White's still there. This guy is right here. That's why I've got him at 19. He'd definitely be a lot higher for me if he went anywhere, probably but New England. But this guy right here, I think, has amazing upside if and when he gets his opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. I have at 19, I have Brian Robinson. Gibson's been a guy that I've been extremely high on in the past. He's had some good years here recently, but he's also ran into some fumbling issues. And we're talking about Brian Robinson, which it shouldn't matter, but it does for me for whatever reason. We're talking about an Alabama running back. They always seem to find a way to be fairly successful, with the exception of Trent Richardson. But, the draft capital was a little different there. Brian Robinson's a guy that I could see come in the year to start the year as very minimal workload. And then if Gibson's fumble issues become a thing again this year, or there's injury, this could be a situation where you see a guy like Brian Robinson come in and become a true 3-down back. I mean, yes, like you alluded to, they went really hard to re-sign J.D. McKissick, and I think J.D. McKissick will have a role. But Brian Robinson's a guy that I think is going to, make some noise in that backfield. And then at 20, I actually went quarterback here, and the quarterback I went is Kenny Pickett, just because I think Kenny Pickett's got a chance to be the week 1 starter. There is a lot of good mouths to feed there, and it doesn't hurt for him to have a good running game and Najee Harris to help him out as well.
Absolutely. At number 20, I also went quarterback. I went with Malik Willis. It's 20 is about where I'm comfortable taking a stab at a QB in this draft. Kenny Pickett wouldn't hate to be moved into number 20. Like I said, when I went over the top 5 QBs, Pickett, Willis are really my 1A, 1B. The only real reason I like Willis more is his rushing upside. But yeah, definitely a QB there this late in a rookie draft is absolutely a good idea.
Absolutely. Guys, thanks for listening to us again this week. If you tuned in both weeks, I alluded to it earlier. We're going to get into some mock drafts as the season gets closer to kind of get you guys set up for whether it be a startup draft or a rookie draft. Excuse me. We will do positional breakdowns at some point, so stay tuned for that. And go listen to Seth Berger for IDP, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.